Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 5090 O-level biology, June 23, question paper 2-1, and this is the second video, and it has the last three questions in this video. Now coming to question number 5, myopia is an eye condition. If a person has myopia, near objects can be seen clearly, but not those that are far away. So you can look at it, you can read a book, but you can't see. If you're driving, you can't see the mountains miles away. It can happen when the eyeballs grow slightly too long, as shown in figure. So they become a little too long with the age or with the time. So light from far objects now cannot focus on the fovea. Explain how parts of the eye are involved in producing a clear image of a near object. Well, that's 4 marks. Light is refracted by the cornea, refracted, not reflected, refracted or bent by the cornea. Ciliary muscle contract, suspensory ligaments become slack, lens becomes fatter or you can say more convex, and light is bent more by the lens. You know, naturally, if it's a thicker lens, or you can have a thinner lens, so the light rays will be bent more, and the light or the image is focused or formed on the retina, which is the fovea here. So how parts of the eye are involved in producing a clear image of a near object? You're reading a book. When you look up, you look at a mountain far away. You're driving, you're reading a book in the car. So it's a near object. But when you look out of the window of the car or the windscreen of the car, you see mountains far away. How is it that the eye changes in order for you to be able to see? So the lens becomes near. When you're looking at something near, lens becomes more convex. If you go through my videos, I made a mnemonic for that, NMC. Near, more convex, distant, less convex. So this is NMC, near, more convex, distant, less convex. So now you have to remember this. I mean, if ever this question comes, you just have to remember these mark scheme points. Light refracted by the cornea. You see, this is the cornea. This is the cornea, is the outer part. This is the cornea. Now, as soon as there is air here and there's liquid here inside the aqueous humor, so as soon as the medium changes, the light rays are going to be bent as soon as it touches the cornea, because there's air here and there's water, the aqueous humor inside the eye, in the first chamber, in the anterior chamber or in the front chamber, the area before the lens. So light is refracted by the cornea, ciliary muscles contract, suspensory ligaments become slack, so lens becomes fatter or you can say more convex, and light is refracted by the lens. Otherwise, you see what would happen, the light rays would just go straight. There would be no focusing. Light is refracted by the lens and light is focused or the image is formed on the retina. Part 2 of the question is, suggest why individuals with long eyeballs cannot see far away objects clearly. You may draw on the diagram of the eye in figure 1.1. So why individual with long eyeballs? Now you've got to understand what would happen. You see the light rays would refract too much, so they will meet before the retina. So the image will not be formed on the retina, but it will be formed a little in front of the retina. So you will not be able to see very clearly, and that's why you need glasses for that. So why the individuals with long eyeballs cannot see far away objects? Because you see, you have to understand is that the parallel rays, when it's coming for a far off object, the parallel rays, and then they bent. And when they bent, they should cross. That is the point here. When they cross, this should be at the fovea. But if the light rays are going to cross earlier at here point, and this is the retina here, so then of course the person is not going to be able to see clearly. Then coming to the B part of the question, A country carried out two national surveys, health surveys, separated by approximately 30 years. Table 5.1 shows the information that was obtained about myopia. Age 12 to 17, males. They were 21.7, now they are 30.9. In the females, they were 26.4, they are 37. So there's an increase of how much? Nearly 10, 11. Here it was only 9. 18 to 24-year-olds, males were 22.5, they went up to 29.7. Females were 32.5, so they were more. And now they went up to 46. Then coming to the 25 to 34, they were 20.2, they went up to 38.9. We're talking of the males now. Please look at it very carefully. Then the females were 27.8 and went up to 49.1. So look at these two tables very separately and analyze them. Now, what are they going to ask you? They say comment on how the percentage of people with myopia has changed in this population. How has it changed in this population? Very easy. What has happened? The people with myopia have increased in both males and females, or you could say in all the age groups. Increased most in the 25 to 34 age group and especially the females. And then you do a data code. Data code means you talk about the 25 to 34 years, they were 20.2% in the males and went up to 38.9%. In the females, that was 27.8% and they went up to 49.1%. You must say the percentage, you must write the percentage. That is called a data code. So you do a comparative data, and that of course gets you 1 mark. So people with myopia have increased in both male and female, and all the age groups increased most in 25 to 34 age group. So you do a comparison. You look at it generally and then you look at the differences. Has it increased more in some, or has it increased in all, but then in one category they've increased very little? Then the data code you gave me, data code means you give me actual figures and units from the table that was given to you. That's a very important part of the syllabus. It is thought that myopia is the result of a combination of genetic and environmental factors. It has been suggested that the changing percentage of people with myopia is a result of changes in human activity. Suggest a change in human activity, how it could make a person less able to see far away objects clearly. Well, of course, then you've got to think of it as very rational. They'll spend less time outdoors or in sports activities, or they spend more time on their computers and mobile looking at things very near to them. You're looking at near objects, so the eyes are not trained enough, or they are not enough practice at looking at far away objects. So they constantly, if they are on their tablets or on their phones or on their computers, so they don't have a chance to really, the eye has not become accustomed to, the muscles don't work that much, like the ciliary muscle, which changes the thickness of the lens, that is not being used, and all the time you're inside and you're working inside. So that could, maybe it's just a a suggestion. Suggestions can be anything. So if you just look at the wording, less time spent outdoors, eye is not trained to look at far away objects. Okay, then we come on to the last part, which is the C part. Iris color is genetically determined. The allele for blue color small b is recessive to the allele for brown color big B. Explain why it is not possible to have a heterozygous blue-eyed person. So if the allele for blue color is small b, so people with small b will be blue-eyed. Brown-eyed people will be what? Brown-eyed people can be capital B, or they can be capital B, small b. Because why? It's a dominant allele. That's what's given in the question. It's a capital B. So brown-eyed people can be this or this. But if it's a recessive, then the person who is recessive can only be a homozygous recessive. So that is how you would have to answer this question. Blue-eyed person is the recessive allele, would have to be two recessive, homozygous recessive. Blue-eyed person is to be homozygous, both alleles are the same. Heterozygous means the alleles are different. So B is dominant, so big B is also brown, and big B, small b would also have brown eyes. So this is how you write it, or you word your answer. It's a 3-mark question, and you be careful when you're writing the answer. So let's look at the answer. Blue eyes is two recessive alleles. Blue eyes is homozygous. Heterozygous means the alleles are different. Big B, small b. B is dominant, so big B, small b will be brown eyes. Now coming to question number 6. The human heart pumps blood which circulates around the body in blood vessels. Name the chamber of the heart with the thickest wall. Naturally, it's the left ventricle. The left ventricle pumps blood with a greater force because it has to go into the aorta, and the aorta carries it to all the different parts of the body. State what causes the sound of the heartbeat, the lub-dub. That is the closing of the valves. Closing of the valves causes this lub-dub. Name the blood vessel that carries blood from the aorta to the liver. The liver, you know, is hepatic. So if it is rising from the aorta, it has to be the hepatic artery, aorta, A artery. That state one function of blood plasma. Transports glucose, transports amino acid, anything you could have mentioned, transports hormones. You could have said anything. It says a named substance. So glucose, amino acids, hormones, urea. Explain the difference between antibodies and antibiotics. What are antibodies? Antibodies are produced by white blood cells. Antibiotics are drugs or medicines that are administered, like you take vibramycin or you take ciproxin or you take augmentin. That's an antibiotic, but you take it orally or you get it by an injection. But antibodies are produced in your body by your white blood cells, not mine or anybody else's. So antibodies produced in response to an antigen. Antibodies are more specific. Antibiotics will only kill bacteria, but antibodies will also affect viruses. Why antibiotics do not kill viruses? Or you could have said antibodies are proteins and antibiotics are not. Antibiotic is something else. If you take medicine like augmentin or ciproxin, that's an antibiotic, it's anti-life. It kills bacteria. Bio is living. So differences between antibiotics and antibodies, they've asked you. So look at the answers. Antibodies produced by white blood cells. Antibiotics are drugs or slash medicines. Antibodies produced in response to antigen. Antibodies are more specific. Antibiotics do not affect viruses. Now coming to the C part of the question. Describe how the process of natural selection has led to the development of strains of antibiotic resistant bacteria. First of all, there is variation within a population. Mutation produces resistant bacteria. Antibiotics kill many bacteria, but some survive. Why? Because there's variation. Survivors reproduce, pass on the alleles to the next generation. This is repeated over many generations, so higher proportion of bacteria in population can resist antibiotics. And of course, we also do a lot of harm by misuse and overprescription of antibiotics, which increases the chances of resistant bacteria developing. Why? Because when you give antibiotics, yeah, you take antibiotic just like that. You don't have any problem, but you take an antibiotic. So any bacteria which are present in the body, some of them will die, some will survive, because all bacteria are not the same. Now the ones that have survived are resistant to that antibiotic. Say I took ciproxin. So I had 100 million bacteria in my body. 80 million have been destroyed, but 10 million are resistant. Now the 10 million will increase in numbers. Why? Because my body is a very good place, the right temperature, got food available. Now these bacteria are all resistant. Now if I have to pass on the infection to somebody else, well, he or she also gets those resistant bacteria. Now vary over a period of time, antibiotics do not work because people have been indiscriminately taking antibiotics. In Pakistan, of course, it is available over the counter, but if you go to America or UK, you cannot buy an antibiotic. You have to get a prescription from a doctor. Only then you will get an antibiotic. So let's look at the wordings of the answers. Variation within a population. You see bacteria are of different types. Mutation produces resistant bacteria. A mutation arises and now the bacteria become resistant. Antibiotics kill bacteria but many survive. Survivors reproduce, pass on the allele to the next generation. This is repeated over many generations. Now a higher proportion of bacteria can resist antibiotics. And overprescription, that means everybody is given an antibiotic without thinking that is it a viral disease or a bacterial disease or a fungal disease, and you just give them antibiotics, or maybe some sort of a seasonal allergy or something and you give them an antibiotic. So overprescription increases the chances, because if I do not need antibiotics, why am I taking antibiotics? It's going to kill the good bacteria in my intestine as well. That's again a very bad side effect of taking antibiotics. So this is what you have to understand is that antibiotics should not be taken indiscriminately and should not be taken without a proper prescription or without a proper doctor saying, okay, well, you need it, you've got a bacterial infection. Now coming to question number 7, this is the last question. The carbon cycle is fundamental to all ecosystems. Carbon is continuously cycled between living organisms and the atmosphere as shown in figure 7.1. Describe how carbon is cycled between living organisms and the atmosphere, and that's 5 marks. That's a sort of a like the previous in the previous syllabus we had essay question, but it's not sort of an essay question, but a little like that. So carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is absorbed by the chlorophyll, or you can say by the plants, and the process is called photosynthesis. This results in the production of glucose, and this glucose is used to make other organic substances like nitrates will be added and converted to amino acids, or the glucose is going to be converted into fats, or the glucose will be converted into starch and stored, or the glucose is going to be converted into sucrose or fructose. That's why fruits that we eat are so sweet, because they have sucrose or fructose in it, which are fruit sugars. Then when these are eaten by animals or humans, animals, of course, humans are also animals category. So when they're eaten by animals, then those organic molecules like glucose could be respired to release energy. And that, of course, releases the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So 5 marks, lots and lots of points for this, giving me the process of photosynthesis, giving me the process of respiration. So how carbon is cycled between living organisms and the atmosphere. So you cannot be talking about the decomposers. If you look at my video, I say there's one side you have photosynthesis, and on the other side you have respiration, combustion, and decomposition. But you can't talk of these because it says between living organisms. So you can't talk about these two. So you just have to talk about respiration and photosynthesis. So I usually write photosynthesis just as a short PS. So carbon dioxide in the air absorbed by plants, or you could have said producers, or you could have said even chlorophyll. That was also correct. Process is called photosynthesis, 2nd mark. Production of glucose, 3rd mark. Used to make starch or cellulose or amino acids or proteins, you could have got another mark. Then eaten by animals, another mark. Then these glucose molecules are respired to release the carbon dioxide, because we're talking of the CO2 cycle. We are talking of the carbon dioxide cycle, which is the carbon cycle in which the carbon dioxide is being produced and then by respiration by animals and plants, and then it is being used in photosynthesis. So you have to make that cycle. It said living organism. So that is why we are not talking about combustion and decomposition, as I just talked about it. Now coming to the B part of the question. Woodland ecosystems are often managed by humans. If trees in a woodland are chopped down, they can be, number 1, burned, number 2, removed and made into objects, number 3, left in the ecosystem. So we've cut down the trees, and then we've either burned them or we have removed them and made them into furniture or something like that, and or you've just left them in the ecosystem. Compare the effects of these 3 different forms of management on the woodland ecosystem itself and more widely on the planet. Now, of course, the burning part is the bad part, because it releases carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and that will result in global warming and climate change. Now, if they're made into objects, So they will act as it locks up the carbon. It acts as a carbon store. And you have also, trees have been removed from the ecosystem, so nutrients have been removed. It's going to result in soil erosion. Now, if you have left them in the ecosystem, like you've just cut down the trees and you've left them there, then they will be fed on by the decomposers, which are the fungi and the bacteria, and the nutrients will be returned to the soil. And the respiration of the decomposers will release the carbon dioxide gradually. Also, the dead trees or the log of wood can act as a habitat for squirrels, for ants, for many insects. So that is what you can also talk about. So there were very many different points, and you had to come up with 5 marks of worth of points. And you could have at least given me one for each. I couldn't have given you marks if you just wrote 3 points on just on burning. So there should have been 1 point for burning, one for made into objects, and one for left in the ecosystem, and then two here and there. I would have given you a mark for that. So burning is going to release carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, will result in global warming, and this will result in, of course, climate change, means the earth will become a hotter place, and will melting of the glaciers and flooding and all that. For the second point, made into objects, like made into furniture or made into houses, or the wooden blocks are used, wooden planks are used to make houses. So objects act as a carbon store, or you can say it locks up the carbon. And when the trees have been removed from the ecosystem, so nutrients have been removed. You see, the trees act as a very nice, they take up nutrients from the soil, and then, the leaves grow and the leaves fall back to the ground, and then those are decomposed and the nutrients are recycled. When you remove the trees, well, of course, you're removing all the soil, of course, is also going to be affected. Plus, the water rises, and then there's transpiration, and then there's cloud formation, and then there's rain. So when you remove the trees, you're really actually upsetting the whole balance of the ecosystem. So looking at the third heading, is left in the ecosystem. You cut down the trees and you leave them in the ecosystem. Now, maximum you're going to get 2 marks. You can't get, if you wrote all these 4 points, I'm not going to give you 4 marks. So the trees will be fed on by the decomposers, the nutrients will be returned to the soil, then the respiration of decomposers will release the carbon dioxide gradually, and the dead tree or the log can act as a habitat. So lots of points, and if you have a vivid imagination and you can think of all these things, okay, just think trees being cut down and then lying there, what is going to happen to them? What is going to happen? They're actually finally going to rot. In a way, they're going to decompose. So please understand this, and that comes to the end of this paper. And thank you very much, and best of luck for the exams. And do keep in touch and let me know if I can help you in any more videos that you need.